I've been playing games since I was a little kid, but like so many others, FF7 was the game that got me into games. It was the game that took me from someone who played games sometimes, to someone who loved games and could not get enough of them. It sucked me in so thoroughly that shortly after, I'd abandoned Yu-Gi-Oh cards and Beyblade entirely to buy every JRPG I could get my hands on. Within a year, I had played every Final Fantasy and began looking up what the classics were. If education is a journey, this was the beginning of mine. It's safe to say that without FF7, this channel would not exist. All of this to say that Final Fantasy is important to me. But it's in no small way divisive. There's no other series out there that possesses such sky-high peaks and such bottomless valleys in terms of quality. I know I'm not alone in feeling that after Final Fantasy XII, the value of the Final Fantasy name began to plummet fairly harshly. Some would say it began before even then, though I'd contest that. However, I doubt that anyone would deny that the Final Fantasy brand over this past console generation has come to be, at best, distrusted, and at worst, actively maligned. Even Metallica could look at Final Fantasy and say, "What happened to you, man?" A slew of lazy releases, brand cash-ins, and only one mainline title that was so bad that I, no joke, consider to be the worst game I have ever played to completion rounded out the series in the 7th gen console lifespan. This, combined with its dev cycle of a full decade, meant that Final Fantasy XV had a lot to not only live up to, but accomplish. When I placed my order for this game on Amazon, I made this tweet, and this is an instance of part joke, and part the most pure kind of sincerity I could ever hope to offer anyone. This was my line in the sand for Final Fantasy. For all of the good it has brought into my life, if this had been even mediocre, I would have never given Square or Final Fantasy the time of day again outside of the rare interesting release and the $5 GameStop clearance bargain bins that exist for you to steal from so that they have that much less stock to deal with. This wouldn't have been any kind of petty boycott, mind you, but rather it would mean that they were once and for all not the Squeenix I fell in love with as a kid, and as such would be subject to the same purchasing rules I hold for 99% of devs out there. But because of the low quality titles that came before it, I came into FF15 with no expectations, either good or bad. So, 500 words into this review and I finally come to my opinion about the game we're actually here to discuss. To put it simply, while it's flawed, Final Fantasy XV embodies so much of what I want out of a game, but very little of what I expected out of a Final Fantasy game. The greatest moments of FF15 don't come from epic set pieces, quirky weirdness, and, at the risk of getting spoilery, character deaths. Rather, they come out of intimate, almost voyeuristic moments of personal calm, intimacy, and, most of all, friendship. But let's back up for a second so I can make this clear. The core gameplay is good. FF15 may be the best Kingdom Hearts game ever made, which probably sounds dismissive to many of you, but I mean it as the most sincere kind of compliment. Overall, the game does prove to be overly easy, but that doesn't subtract from the quality of the overarching experience. The mechanics offer an experience that will reward high-skill players, and based on everything Squeenix has said, it's likely it will become refined to cater to those kinds of experiences in coming patches. I love the mechanics, and if you didn't, give it some time. If you're still upset in a year, then I'll side with you. However, ultimately, thinking the point of Final Fantasy XV is the mechanics is a lot like eating spaghetti and thinking the point of the dish is in taking wheat. The mechanics are solid, but I doubt anyone will love this game because of them. Rather, it's tone and character that make this game flourish. Perhaps the most immediately apparent aspect of this game is its much touted road trip aspect, which it nails flawlessly. Road trip games aren't really a thing, but FF15 has made an incredibly compelling case that they should be. The sense of scope and discovery here is unparalleled by any game I've ever played. I want to make this clear, when I say scope, I don't mean this is the biggest game world I've ever seen, because it's not. By the end of the game, it only takes about 10 minutes to get across the entire map, so in terms of sheer size, it isn't that grand. Likewise, when I say discovery, I don't mean there's that much to discover here. While I wasn't a fan of it, there's no doubting that this year's No Man's Sky blows FF15 out of the water in both of these departments. But, well, I'll put it this way. Disneyland is only 86 acres large, or 0.15 square miles. That is small, but anyone who's been there knows that it feels huge. Massive, in fact. Through use of clever road layouts, architecture, and spectacle, it makes itself feel like somewhere that's worthy of being called a kingdom, and FF15 uses many of the same tricks. First off, it's a game that will inspire awe through its visuals. This game is, no joke, the most graphically beautiful game I have ever played. I realize some Witcher fans may be upset by that statement, but I'll roll those dice. Because not since the days of the early PS2 have I played a game that just made me stop, look at the visuals, and say, Jesus, how did they make this? But FF15 was more than happy to bring back that gleeful technological awe. However, as FF13 proved, polygon count doesn't mean that the visuals are good. FF15 knows this and brilliantly uses its visuals to feed into the larger feel of the game. There are better examples than this, but I don't want to ruin those for you, so I'll just use this one. Within the first couple hours of the game, you will drive from this gas station to this seaside hotel. On the way there, you will shift from an Arizona-esque desert to deep valleys punctuated by these amazing rock bridges. But that transition is so gradual that it feels like a major journey, even if it's only a couple miles. Finally, it's punctuated by this gorgeous seaside shot that is so drastically different from where you came from that it makes it clear that you well and truly traveled. Both FF15 and Disneyland are able to enhance their supposed size by using the same approach, filling their worlds with a constantly new variety of settings that tricks your brain into thinking it went a lot further than it actually has. In this way, it made FF15 feel bigger to me than No Man's Sky could ever hope to. A knock-on effect of this sense of travel is how it makes you feel closer to the characters you travel with. After all, a road trip without other people is really just a long drive. But FF15 knows well enough to give you a group of characters that you will eagerly want to bring with you on your journey. This game is built from the ground up for its players to experience what I have no better terminology to describe as the experience of male friendship. It's bro culture without the insecurity of declaring no homo every time they grant each other any level of respect. The relationship between the four main characters may be the most tightly knit chemistry I have ever seen outside of a Persona game. The game's first moments of interaction are you and the team pushing your broken down car to the nearest gas station while everyone trades playful insults and complains over their shared annoyance. It's a personal moment between them, but it's one that will most likely call to mind memories of similar circumstances that you yourself have been in. It's one of those moments where things could not be more annoying, but you have your favorite people in the world around you, so you get to be annoyed together. And the game is littered with moments like this, these little vignettes of humanity and personal love. Final Fantasy XV. Every mid-2000s pop-punk song about friendship and pizza converted to computer code. Every character here fills a much-needed niche, both in terms of the mechanics and the social roles of the group. You have the mom friend, the dad friend, and the sibling, who is best boy despite what some people with garbage taste may think. And this is where the game's writing shines more than anywhere else. Because, you see, looking back at Persona, both 3 and 4, as much as I love every character there, some of them weren't needed. This is proven in the fact that less than half of those characters are in your party at any time. Like, I love Koromaru, but if Koromaru had been cut entirely from the game, it really would not have affected that much. However, if you cut anyone from FF15, the game immediately begins to fall apart because each character fulfills such an important role. And I'm sorry, but I'm about to gush for a second because the level of dialogue here is on par with games like Undertale and the Zero Escape series. It's just mind-blowing. Everyone is so well-defined and likable, and it makes perfect sense why and how they get along and why and how they come into conflict with each other. Their interactions are so tightly constructed that I wouldn't be shocked to find out that they made up the overwhelming majority of the writing team's time. It's just so charismatic and personable, and it reminds me of hanging out with my friends more than any other piece of art I've ever seen. I love it so much! I want to add so much more to this, but I am trying really hard to keep this spoiler-free for the time being. You deserve to discover these people on your own. Final Fantasy XV. For the guy who's straight, but secure enough in his own sexuality to openly admit he'd do hand stuff with another guy for $5 grand. There are complaints to be had here, no doubt. As I said before, in its current state, it's pretty easy to shatter the game on a mechanical perspective. Beyond that, the game begins to fall apart a little towards the end, though I think it manages to pick itself up brilliantly before the final hour rolls around. And looking back on games like FF7 can't help but make me feel like there should be a greater variety in both character builds and optional content here. There are no submarine arcade games here, just a fake pinball thing. Some character arcs are haphazard or dropped last moment, and the core plot could have definitely used some elaboration in the core game and not in two separate, solid but unneeded films. In a lot of ways, it would be like if the story of Nibelheim were only available in the Last Order OVA. But FF15 isn't about the plot. Like, yes, it's there, it matters, and despite its flaws, it is enjoyable, but this game is about the plot in the same way The Big Lebowski is about a rug getting pissed on. Sure, that motivates the actions of many of the core characters in the story and defines what they are searching for over the course of their journey, but we don't care about the rug. We care about the dude being able to just live his life. We care about Walter and his struggle to find calm for 5 minutes. We care about Donnie and whether or not he'll shut the f*** up. And we care about the Jesus and whether or not he's going to bang a child. Holy hell. In the same way that The Big Lebowski is a hangout movie where we're more interested in spending time with these characters and seeing how they interact, FF15 is, more than anything, a hangout game. My only regret with this game is not playing it with more people around me, because it is a game best played in the way the main character experiences it, surrounded by people you love. People frequently refer to games like Civilization and Animal Crossing as cozy, and they are, but FF15 takes it to a whole new level. A game like Animal Crossing is cozy in the way that sitting in front of a fireplace in winter is cozy, and that's a great feeling. But you know what's better? Sitting in front of a fireplace in winter with 3 of your best friends while you bitch about how cold it is, while 3 of you get drunk on peppermint schnapps, while the 4th gets drunk on Irish whiskey, knowing full well he'll be far more sober than all of you in an hour despite drinking more. And that, in so many ways, is the Final Fantasy XV experience. Final Fantasy XV isn't going to save Final Fantasy, because this isn't a Final Fantasy game. This is so far removed from the games that define Final Fantasy as a series that this will do nothing to bring the series back in any kind of traditional meaning. You know what this is? This is meeting an old high school friend after you finish college. And they aren't the same person you knew, but they're still really cool. Sure, now they have a kid and don't drink hard alcohol anymore, but they still want to invite you over to show you their man cave and give you some of their homebrewed ale that's better than anything you've managed to ever find at Target. There's no small amount of melancholy to be found in the fact that the person you knew is, for all intents and purposes, dead. But this phoenix that came out of his ashes is pretty cool in his own right. This is Final Fantasy trying to grow up without losing its immaturity. In an era of self-serious games that are constantly trying to tackle the most heady and complicated issues of our times, playing a game that is focused almost exclusively on the kinds of personal journeys, travels, and interactions that we all experience on a near daily basis may ultimately prove in the long run to be just as exciting and groundbreaking for Final Fantasy and gaming as a whole as the first time they made us lose someone we cared about. Hey guys, Ryan here. Just wanted to apologize for missing the past couple weeks. Lots of stuff going on, real life and all of that, a couple medical issues, etc, etc. Anyways, it's looking like it will be all smooth sailing from here on out. Next week's video will drop on Wednesday because holiday stuff, but I am planning on dropping 2 videos before the end of the year, so you've got that to look forward to. Thanks for being patient with me, you're all the best. See you next week. Peace.